Ahora sí.
Me acuerdo. ¿Quién empezaba?
Bueno, los dejo acomodarse unos segundos.
I'll give you a few more minutes to get settled. Welcome to our second part of the day. We will now review ICP-2, the RI governance document. We will welcome the members of the NRO RC. They will present the work that's been done so far and then open space for consultation with the community. We will first welcome Jorge Villa. Jorge. Thank you. It might happen. My name is Jorge Villa. I don't know if you know. I'm here because I am a very well-known psychiatrist. I'm doing great work rescuing lost souls, people that you find along the way. Some people are saying I am lagging behind with the procedure, but I'll show everyone that I'm doing well. This is the era of AI. ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, all of those tools, platforms, and algorithms that are useful to do many things. So today, a child could do their homework with ChatGPT, the child does it, and the child might even win an award with the work done by ChatGPT. Someone that's never went to music school, with AI they can compose music, upload it to Spotify and earn money. Or someone that does not know how to draw, and with AI they create art and paintings and becomes very well known. So in the era of I think that's what's happening is that human intelligence becoming increasingly more artificial. So I have a different method. I work with everything's natural for me. And I'll show you how I work. As it turns out, I'll develop a method which is like a group therapy, but I will ask the audience to participate. And it's like television, but without rehearsing. So well, 2 days ago, in that opening night cocktail, I ran into two people who had quite a strange attitude and said, "I GPT," and I thought that they were requesting a song to the DJ. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I gave them a beer. They told me a story. I gave them 2 beers. They told me another story. And I concluded I would invite them to this consultation today about what is going on to see if that group therapy helps things work out. I will invite them in a minute on stage. I know I don't look like a psychiatrist right now. Let me just put on my psychiatrist clothes. Right, there was no budget for more than this. Okay, so let me get my tools. I have my glasses to see everyone's energy. I have these glasses so I can see my patient's energy, and some tools sort of to fine tune some stuff. This doesn't fail. This doesn't either. And, and this always comes in handy. With these three things, I can just cure anybody. So I will ask the two people that I'm trying to rescue to come on stage with me, Esteban Lescano and Ricardo Patara. Please join me on stage so I can see them better. Let me take off my glasses. It's not too sunny in here. So please take a seat. Okay, so these are the tools. They showed me this picture, a picture of them. No, an older picture, that one. They showed me that picture of the pictures of the ASOAC members. Based on what they've told me, they are a group of people who are part of ICANN's structure, and they are an advisory group within ICANN. They are an advisory group to the board on internet number resources. So you've probably remember from this morning's session that they provided some information. As you can see, there are people from different regions, and therefore I will have more clients. So once they see the results I get with them, everyone will want a session or 2 sessions or 3 sessions. We are missing Afrinix members in this image. As Ricardo said earlier, there are certain situations going on and they're sort of rebuilding the community. So I think we are on the right track. So this is my office, and in my office I will try to do something with them too. So I don't know if you remember yesterday when we awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award to Oscar Massano. Oscar said something quite important, is that in that ICANN Shanghai meeting in October 2002, ICANN's board said yes to the new regional registry for Latin America and the Caribbean, LACNIC. It's the organization that's sponsoring this event.
Pero el documento que permitieron esa oficialización de un nuevo registro regional.
So the document that laid the foundations for these new registries, the ICP-2 Internet Coordinated Policies number 2. ICP-2. So that was the famous ICP-2. I had a hard time understanding what they were saying. They were saying ICP-2. So I will ask him some questions to see if I can cure you. I hope that's the case. So if this is a 2001 actually document, what is going on? How come it's been updated so many years later? What can you tell me? Can anybody tell me why? I'm very distraught. I am very concerned. I keep saying ICP-2, 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 and I really need your help to understand so I can heal. It's a 20-year-old document that regulates how regional internet registries are regulated, and it was time we updated it. Internet over time. In October 2024, we published a document with the principles that will apply in the operation of an RIR. They were submitted to public consultation in all of the regional communities and through ICANN's list, and a consultation led by ICANN. And with those results, ASO met. We worked very hard to draft a document, and that was the first draft of the document that is called governance document for the recognition, operation, and withdrawal of the recognition of RIRs. That document was also submitted to public consultation this year. And as a result, it was put up for consultation again through ICANN's list. And with all of the contributions received, ASO met and we drafted the second draft. And this is what we're doing both through the regional lists and ICANN. Okay, so how did this come to be? So why did you start? Because you wanted to? Because someone asked you to do it? If you can tell me something about it. Well, thank you, Dr. Jorge, for having us here today. As Esteban mentioned, ICP-2. The ICP-2 is the document that we have in place. It's a valid, relevant document, the document that was used for LACNIC. But it's a old document. The internet's changed, relationships have changed, and NRO, which is the organization that brings together the RIRs, requested, well, as the other Jorge explained this morning, we explained the similarities between NRO and ASO. So they requested we reviewed the document, and that review started some time ago. And that's why we're, well, a little bit nervous with that topic, because we keep repeating ICP-2. But yeah, that's it. And something that is worth mentioning is that even though we are here before you, that document was drafted by all of us.
So they organized the suggestions, the answers to the queries that I made, and every region at some moment had a presentation on this work in order to be aware that the consultation was open and that they could all participate. So our work involved writing the document, drafting the document, include the ideas, but it's a document that was built with the entire community. So in other words, I understand then that this is a bottom-up task where the communities provide feedback and you somehow are the people who analyze all this work and prepare that document. But this is collective work, as if I understand. Am I right? Yes, perfectly right. Yes. That is the role of the SOAC. They are in charge of coordinating the global policies affecting the number resources, and in this case, it is the update of that ICP-2 document with the representation and the participation of all the different communities of the RIRs. So this document is version 2, as we heard. So what is the difference compared to the first version? Well, it has several differences. We have a list of the major changes. We see differences from version 2 to version 2. For example, the title seeks simply to include the operation, not recognizing only an IR, but also the operation, and also revoking that knowledge. The idea of the document is to regulate everything involving the full life cycle of a regional internet registry. There also is a preamble. This preamble explains how the updating process took place and specifically stipulates the principles that rule the management of the internet number resource and stipulates that this has to be fair, equitable, open, and also based on policies developed by the various communities responding to a global need of using these resources, that the administration of which is done in a coordinated manner. This also includes implementation procedures. It also has recognition and revocation of that acknowledgement, then audits, proposals, and emergency continuity. So what you were explaining, of course, includes many details. Let us go step by step. When we speak about all these new changes, what would you highlight? For example, regarding the title, the preamble, and the implementation procedures. What can you tell me in that regard? Well, starting with the changes from version 1 to version 2, there was no problem with the title itself, but what we sought was to include another word to better convey the objective of this document. The initial title referred to maintaining the status, but it's more than that. So the idea was to also refer and clarify the title itself so that it would be clear as to the scope of the document. The preamble is a text that is at the beginning of the document. There was a preamble, but it was shorter. The group focused more on the procedures and the operation. The community asked many questions regarding the document, so there was some confusion. So it was considered that it would be good to expand the preamble to explain the purpose of the document, what it can be used for, and also the implementation procedures. The document is like a guide to explain how things work. So how is this implemented? This will be another document. so that the document won't include more the operational issues, but rather a guide as to how the RIR would work. Then there will be another document, because in the queries, through the queries, we realized that people sort of mixed up the ideas regarding the future implementation. So there will be another document that is more technical, more specific and objective regarding the implementation of the rules contained in the document that we are describing. Ricardo, allow me to add that this document also has to do with what we call the supremacy. The implementation documents, which will be prepared by the RIRs and ICANN, cannot contradict this document on governance. Then there's another principle that is important, that is the absence of the implementation procedures doesn't affect the application of the governance document, and this is also important. Well, that is interesting, but you told me about something that has to do with acknowledging and revoking the recognition, the acknowledgement. So I think it's sort of something that seems to be quite sensitive and important. So how could you expand on that, please? Well, these are the two topics of the document. One is the acknowledgement, the recognition. But the first topic is the acknowledgement or recognition when there is an application, someone wishes to become a regional internet registry. What is the process that has to be followed? This document describes the requirements and how the decision is made for the recognition. The document states that the final decision is in the hands of ICANN, but in that decision, the other regional registries are also involved, so there has to be unanimous approval of the recognition of the new registry. This has to do with a principle, namely that the registries have a territorial servicing area, and the world has been covered. The world has been divided into 5 regions. There are 5 registries, so the creation of a new registry has an impact on the operation areas of the existing registries. This procedure, therefore, involves unanimity. In addition to this, this is a global coordinated service. Now, what would occur if there is no unanimity? So the applicant, recognizing this recognition, can request a review. This is what version 2 of the document has included. You can request ICANN for a review. ICANN appoints an independent third party with the required expertise to analyze whether this denial of the rejection of the recognition was not based on an error or was not based on incomplete information. And this ends up becoming a report. This report is raised to ICANN and to the existing registries. The existing registries, once again, express whether they recognize or do not recognize that RIR. There has to be unanimity. If there is no unanimity, then ICANN could not recognize it. Then another interesting thing that is included in version 2 is a following stage, whereby in the event of having reconsidered this based on the report done by the independent third party, there would be only one RIR opposing that recognition. In that case, another report could be requested from this independent third party in order to analyze whether that denial, that rejection, is based on incomplete information. And in that case, they could even advise ICANN, which ultimately makes the final decision to not to consider that rejection. So the intention is to avoid someone saying, I oppose this just because I feel like it. So this has to be a unanimous decision. This unanimous decision is generated through these processes that determine that that is based on complete information and that all the participants along the process are acting on good faith. And you're asking me on revoking knowledge. Rejecting this recognition is a process that is very serious. So rejecting a regional registry is like the last option. There has to be a regional registry that is not complying with its commitments, with the operational requirements established in the document. So in view of this situation, some of the other RIRs or the membership in a percentage not less than 25% or 2,000 members or even ICANN could then initiate the process for rejecting that recognition. That rejection procedure has to be also count on the unanimous approval of the RIRs, and the RIRs, if they consider that this rejection applies, they advise ICANN to operate in that direction. One of the things that has to be highlighted is that the ultimate decision is in the hands of ICANN, and that decision of ICANN can be appealed through the mechanisms to review any decision made by the ICANN board. That's very interesting. How many have read this document? Have you read the document? I think that you should read this document. Someone here has read it. Tell those who are seated next to you, tell them about this. Well, one of the important things is that this document has been translated into Spanish and into Portuguese by LACNIC staff. It's included in LACNIC's site. So the version that the ASO-AC works on is the English version, but for our community, these documents have been translated to the languages of the region, so this encourages participation. But I understand that the issue of recognition and rejection should also include some auditing mechanism. So does that exist? Does it not exist? How has that been contemplated? Well, that's very important. What you say, Dr. Jorge, is something isn't working. There has to be a mechanism in place in order to consider these cases. Yes, audits have been included in the document. There are two audit options. One is a periodical one that has to be done every 3 years. All the RIRs that are part of the governance system for the addresses have to undergo an audit at least once every 3 years. This has been foreseen in the documents so that can be certified that everything is working correctly. This has been considered in the document, maybe this regular audit. One of the adjustments in the new version of the document is that there is another auditing mechanism in addition to the regular 3-year audit. There is another one that is an ad hoc audit, not every 3 years, but at some given moment, a member from the community can request an audit. For example, it is foreseen that maybe an RIR that is part of the system can request an audit, or even members from the community. There we have criteria similar to the ones mentioned by Esteban. At least 2,000 members or 25% of the membership of the RIR, the less of the two. So let us imagine a situation whereby an RIR or someone from the community or even ICANN can also request this ad hoc audit if they perceive that something is not working well, if there's something odd. So an audit can be requested in order to validate that everything is working properly, or if something requires a audit every 3 years, and then the other one, which is the ad hoc audit, which provides the participants with the option, the members and the RIRs and the ICANN, to review the process and certify that everything is working well. This is prior to having a critical situation where other more drastic actions might be required.
Let me also add that the audit needs to be carried out by an independent third party appointed by ICANN based on the audit protocols that are going to be established based on the rules for implementation. As Ricardo said, this is just to keep the good health of the RIR, make sure that we comply with the requirements that were considered at the time of recognition, and if there is something wrong, to be able to adopt the early corrective measures. So very associated to the de-recognition, there is a term that I've seen a couple of times. It is the emergency continuity. What does that mean? So this process is very important. It was not present in the first version of the document, and it's the idea that RIRs are here to provide services to associates. So what would happen if, due to a war, earthquake, any natural disaster, or an internal problem within the RIR, services no longer can be provided? So the governance document establishes the possibility that the other RIRs together plus ICANN can appoint an emergency operator. That emergency operator will have 90 days to operate to reinstate the operations of the RIR. What is interesting is that at the time of deciding for the emergency operator, if possible, it has to be selected in consultation with the community or with the participation of the community. And once that emergency operation is concluded, the RIRs together with ICANN have to draft a final report to analyze that emergency operation, what were the causes that led to that situation. All of that is published and the community gets involved. So it is for accountability of that emergency operator. Okay, so I have heard that today that you are nowadays embarking in a new consultation process for that second version. So what happens after that? Yeah, we are in the middle of the process. We have an open consultation that will expire on November 7th. So I invite everyone to participate in the consultation. And what is next? Well, we have the second draft. We will receive the feedback of the regional communities. Even Afrinic has an open consultation list. ICANN's, of course, it's a global list. And with all of that feedback, the ASO-AC will receive it. We will meet in November, mid-November in Montevideo to process all of the comments received, and we will draft version number 3. We hope that version number 3 is the final version, and then that version needs to be approved by an ROAS and then submitted to ICANN for the approval process. Okay, I think that's quite interesting. I think you feel better, right? I think that you are more relaxed. Okay, I will try and ask the audience whether they have any questions. I mean, since everyone's here, let's see if we can manage it. So we have Ariel Grazer. Did you want to ask something? Okay, go ahead. Based on the original picture that you showed earlier of all of the members and members from different regions, even though I understand that there is no conflict with other regions, but maybe the different regions have different perspectives. What were those discussions? What were the different perspectives? Even more so considering that there's a region that has a more, I don't know, controversial views maybe. So were there any discrepancies when drafting the new version? We always work with a very collaborative spirit for the development of the policies, but in everything pertaining the internet. So even though we have cultural differences, legal differences, language differences, we always try and strive for the best of the shared objective, which is to update the process. So we might have different views in terms of, for example, the majority requirement to have a unanimous decision. Is it 2/3 of majority? Is it unanimous minus one? And so on. So the different cultural baggage and the legal systems, even within one region in the different countries, might vary. But really, after hours and hours of work and listening to different perspectives and position and trying to reach consensus, which we did, and that is reflected in the different versions of the document, it's all been very productive. We have come up with a very robust document that is a result of many hours of discussion, and it gathers the different visions and criteria. I think there is another question here by Fernando Frediani. One of the main innovations of the reviewed proposal for ICP-2 is the capacity to review the recognition of the RIR as such, which was not possible up until now. Some people said it made no sense. So the rules for recognition should continue as such for the RIR to be recognized. So I imagine that in this new version, I mean, this is an innovation. So it can be done in really exceptional situations, like for example in Afrinic, depending the decision that was made. I would imagine that is the spirit of that particular point. Is that the case? I wanted to ask about something else. And I know some people have discussed it, but it was not clear. Are there minimum requirements to suggest the creation of a new RIR so we avoid the possibility that a very large country wants to become an RIR on its own, which makes no sense to me? So to dodge the RIR ecosystem, so are there any ways to prevent it? I will respond in Portuguese. The original document does provide for that, and it raises that concern. The new document, which was one of the requests of the NRO, was to make some additional points even more clear. With regards to the recognition, yes, there is criteria to make sure that any organization that wants to become an RIR should go beyond a single country or a continental size. We follow the same criteria as in the original ICP, as Esteban mentioned at the beginning, as to what were the principles that already existed in the document and the new ones to sustain, and that was the volume, the size, and the way of operating. So no single country can do it on its own. And we also need the support of the community and meet other criteria to make sure that anyone who requests it will meet the governance and financial demands for operations. So those criteria need to be met. It is very important, the new update, in the sense that the other RIRs need to be consulted, or that they can decide on a certain situations that did not exist before, or there was certain taboo to say that the RIR needs to resolve this within its own region, but that was quite satisfactory in Afrinic. And since the entire ecosystem is globally interconnected, I believe it is important that the other RIRs are able to make decisions whenever it's necessary. If there's a very serious problem in one RIR, I think that is very positive and should not be seen as taboo. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Ernesto Majo and Nicolás Antoniello. Who will go first? Well, both. Okay. Very briefly, it's a comment rather than a question. In the first place, to stress the importance of this document for all the RIR system, as Mesano said yesterday in his speech, it is through the current version of this document that LACNIC was recognized as the 4th RIR in 2002, October 31st, 2002 in Shanghai. And so this document is it is quite relevant, particularly relevant for us. It's what made us an organization, allow us to be born as such, to provide services to such a beautiful community. That is the first thing. And then I want to especially acknowledge the work of the 3 people that are on stage. They represent us in discussions. They bring the voice of Latin America and the Caribbean to those forums and allow us to have an impact on the new version of the document, and they do so very selflessly. I want to particularly thank Ricardo, Jorge, and Esteban for the work that they do, such great work. And we've been somewhat struggling for the past 2 years to reach the goal. We're very close, but we still have a little slope to get over. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for how you articulated the process and also enabled our community's participation. Thank you. Okay, Nicolás Antoniello. Thank you. Nicolás Antoniello. Strictly as a member of the community, well, first of all, I of course agree with the thank you. But I am very much aware how much work this is. You did somewhat of a representation of what you do. I mean, we could stay here all week speaking about this, and I know that you have very hard work. You do very hard work. I actually had 3 questions, but I will ask the following. ICP version 1, let's say, ICP-2 version 1 actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the critical aspects of the procedure to recognize an RIR, when LACNIC was recognized, what was critical was the support of the regional community for that recognition to be issued. So what was the value of that, considering that multi-stakeholder value? Is that mapped within this version? Is that reflected in this new version?
Thank you, Nico. This document precisely establishes a requirement for acknowledging and recognizing this, and then there are the permanent commitments of the RIRs throughout the entire life cycle of the RIRs. From those commitments, there are 2 that specifically have to do with what you are asking. One is that they have to be sustained by the community financially. The RIR has to be independent and self-sufficient, but funded by its community. And the other is that it has to be sustained by the community, but in terms of participating in the PDP, it has to be an active community that participates in the PDP in the preparation of the rules for distributing the resources. And then all the other resources, that it's non-for-profit, it has to have open membership, it has to have good corporate governance practices. So in that sense, the document really explains all these requirements contained in the original document and develops other principles in order to have more robust internet registries with greater accountability vis-à-vis their communities, and also where the communities have to be fully involved in the functioning of the RIRs, either financially or through the policy development processes. And then if during those regular audits or the ad hoc audits, would those be things that would also be taken into account for the audit? Well, yes, precisely. You have requirements for the recognition, and then these operational commitments. The audit will reflect how all these commitments are being complied with. And then a very brief one. One is in the rejection of the recognition. If I'm not mistaken, I think maybe because it was to simplify too much, you read unanimity. So until the recognition is not rejected, it remains a RIR, but that is part of the decision. Well, let me clarify. If the RIR runs into problems, it can you have the emergency operator. So you always have that sort of lifesaver. For example, if the service becomes to be affected, you have the emergency operator. This might be temporary, the RIR recovers, so you don't get to the stage of rejecting the recognition. But if non-compliance is serious and irrecoverable, then you have the rejection process. In those cases, the affected RIR only participates with the right to defend itself. For example, if it's not complying with its commitments, it has a possibility of defending itself, explain the situation, and even propose remedies to figure out solutions to what is not working well. So it wouldn't be unanimous. It would be with the agreement of the remaining RIRs. Yes, it's unanimity of those who remain. It might occur that only two might be having problems. Well, always unanimity of those that remain. And my last question, and this is a detail, and you mentioned this, if the continuity operator is triggered, it specifies that this is pro tempore for 90 days. So that period can be renewed if this is not settled in 90 days, or if there's a pandemic that lasts a year. Yes, there are details that we imagine will be included in the implementation documents that are other documents, not this document here. But the temporary 90-day period implies that this is no final decision, but a temporary situation. It can be extended, but of course, as a temporary solution, because the concept here is that if the emergency operator solves a situation, but the RIR is in fact affected, I have to go over to the rejection procedure, or somehow if the continuity of service can be guaranteed to the members of that community. Thank you, Nico. One of the things that Eduardo mentioned, and Jimenez said, yes, regarding the participation of the community, it is also important to highlight that the community, if a given number of members of the community requires this, can request the rejection of a registry, and that's another participation modality that is possible. Thank you, Eduardo. Well, I think this has been quite interesting therapy session. Thank you very much, Doctor. I was full of anxiety regarding this topic. Thank you, Doctor. Well, Ricardo, he has water there, so you're hydrated and you have no bad thoughts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for this session.